Hey everybody, it's JJ here, and we're back again with another Asus PCDIY live stream, but this time around, we're actually going to be doing something a little bit different than the norm. So we're actually going to be doing a brand new live stream. If you guys are actually noticing the title, probably hopefully somewhere in your stream or your description there, it's going to probably show up as actually the Asus Graphics Card stream. So this is actually going to be new for 2023 and moving onward. So we're not going anywhere with the actual Asus PCDIY stream, which actually is normally on Fridays, and will still actually be present on Fridays at 3 p.m., where you can find out about all the latest and greatest hardware when it comes to Asus. But for this stream, we're actually going to be focusing on Asus's NVIDIA graphics card solutions and all things related to that. So we're going to be talking about our hardware. We're going to be talking about updates in terms of drivers, features, functions, usage, maybe tweaking and tuning, build insights, builder spotlight focusing on the graphics cards, and a whole lot more. But the really cool thing I'm excited about is actually I get to actually do this stream with an actual colleague. So this is actually going to be a two-man live stream. So why don't we go ahead and actually introduce my colleague and a new member to Team Asus. We've actually got Jake joining us here from Asus HQ in Northern California. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself, Jake, to those that might not be aware of who you are in terms of the PCDIY community and in terms of a representative now for Asus, right?
Hey everyone. So some of y'all might already recognize me from the Asus PCDIY Facebook group or from some of my previous time in the community. But I'm Jake. I'm now part of the Asus team, a recent adoption to the team. And I will actually be working with JJ on both the PCDIY stream sometimes, but more specifically going forward, I'll be here every Thursday for this graphics card stream. And really looking forward to kind of bringing you some news. And as JJ mentioned, we'll be doing some different content here, really tailored towards kind of the GPU side of tech and on both the hardware and the software feature side. So look forward to some exciting news and some demos and just all around good fun.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely, as this stream kind of continues to evolve, we want to make sure that any of those that are, of course, joining us here on the stream, feel free and let us know what you're interested. So, of course, week to week, we're going to, of course, have, plans in terms of what we're going to be talking about, whether they're going to be new product launches, whether there might be promotions, maybe we're actually doing live demos, maybe giving you kinds of tips and tricks on things like, maybe how to undervolt, how to overclock, maybe, how to do performance tuning, how to compare log files in terms of temperatures. There's going to be a lot of different things that hopefully we'll be jumping into, but we, as always, want to be able to make sure that we're taking feedback from you guys in the community so that we can be conscious of that and try to see how we can integrate that into our content flow. So you guys can always make sure to go ahead and not only follow us on our brand new Asus Graphics social media channels, which, Jake, why don't you go ahead and let them know what are our new actually Asus Graphics social media channels. So keep in mind, guys, these are different than our current, let's say, like Twitter or Instagram or Facebook or YouTube channels. These are new actually social channels that we have. So Jake, why don't you let them know?
Absolutely. Like JJ said, these are completely new social channels for us. They are dedicated to graphics cards. You'll be seeing a lot of content there related to new tech like DLSS 3 and to like ray tracing. Any of these kind of new updates and features coming out, we'll be really highlighting that type of tech along with the new card launches. But you can find all of them at Asus Graphics NA as the handle across Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube for the time being.
Yeah, and if you guys are part of our PCDIY group, don't worry, there's not going to be like a second group or anything like that. So that'll still be kind of like your hub that you can always find out about everything related to graphics in terms of that. So that's ready to go ahead and kick off this show, but let's go ahead and throw out a couple of shout outs just to see some people joining us here. So we've got Juan joining us. Hey, Juan, happy to have you here, man. Thanks so much. So Juan and Juan, right? I like that. All right. Let's see. We got H2O Computers joining us here. Fantastic, man. Always an awesome recent build that you did, man. You absolutely killed it with that new personal build of yours. We've got Eric joining us as well. Fantastic to have you here, man. Thanks so much. We've also got another Just Facebook user there, man. Fantastic. Thank you for joining us here on the stream. So we're going to get ready to go ahead and jump into it. Again, if anybody has any questions or comments, feel free to go ahead and drop them down into the comment section. You guys can also go ahead and hit us up on so not only our social channels, but you can tag us in the PCDIY group, or you can email me if maybe something happens and we don't end up getting to your question or something like that. Feel free to go ahead and email us at pcdiy@asus.com. That's pcdiy@asus.com, and I'll do our best to go ahead and see if we can follow up with you, whether it's going to be like features, function recommendations, questions, or whatnot. I try to check that at least about twice a week, but best place to always be able to get a hold of us is the PCDIY group and tagging us, and usually probably within the same days, probably somebody will end up getting back to you in that regard. All right, let's get ready to go ahead and jump into it. So, Jake, what are we going to be starting this stream off with?
So we'll be starting each stream off with software updates. For a lot of people, it may not always be the most exciting part, but it's kind of a slept-on topic because often you'll get a lot of performance updates, bug fixes, things that may be relevant to you in general, but especially as new games continue to come out. I'm sure some of y'all have seen that like NVIDIA will launch game-ready drivers. So we want to make sure that everyone's aware of, hey, you're going to be playing this new game. You're going to be playing, Marvel Midnight Suns, Forspoken, whatever, and that you get that knowledge so that you know you're up to date on drivers and that you're getting the most out of the hardware you spent good money for.
Yeah, and I think another point too is, occasionally I talk on this and like on the PCDIY Friday streams, right, where there's also other things that sometimes they're not just about maybe new feature introduction that might be in there, but also sometimes you get people that post maybe questions on like, hey, is this thing that I'm talking about like an issue, or how do I know if this is a problem? And after we talk about some of the kind of new things that we're seeing in the latest driver release, we'll touch on actually one of the cool ways that I don't commonly see get talked about in the community, and how actually you can check to see, are there known issues that might actually be present in your system, and you might be experiencing them, and there's an easy kind of cross-validation that you can check on to see if there's actually present. So in a little bit, we'll talk about that. But let's go ahead and jump into, I think, first and foremost, we're going to talk about some of the cool additions and updates that we have, including DLSS 3, which is seeing some, of course, additions with the latest game-ready driver updates. So Jake, why don't you go ahead and let us see what we got going on there?
Absolutely. So NVIDIA has recently launched the new game-ready driver. This one is 528.24, the WQHL driver. So we'll post some of these links to the group and everything afterwards, just to make it a little bit easier for some of you. But essentially the highlight for this one is going to be related to DLSS 3 support and a few DLSS 2 updates. But highlighted is Marvel Midnight Suns, which if some of you haven't seen, they're actually doing Deadpool DLC soon. So if you're a Deadpool fan, definitely be hyped about that. Worth checking out. And
yeah, and also you guys can
3.
check out our ROG Twitch. I think actually Lucky, our social media colleague, has actually been doing some streaming for Midnight Suns too. So if you guys actually want to check out some gameplay, you guys can check that out.
Absolutely. Yeah, she tends to play some of the newer games, and you'll get a chance to kind of explore some of the content and get a feel for the games before you get into it yourself. So also well worth checking out. And then there's been a few new games that have come out recently, one of which was not only really hyped, but is a favorite of mine. So Dead Space got a remake. And
awesome game.
As a fan of the series, so hyped for that. That's been out for just a few days now, but that got DLSS 2 support. And then we've also got Deliver Us Mars, which is launching today. It's a sequel to Deliver Us the Moon. That's getting DLSS 3 support. And then Forspoken, which has been out for a few days, and that has the DLSS 2 support. So again, that's one of the benefits of these drivers, is that these are brand new games and you've got a driver tailor-made to it and already working towards giving you the most performance and features that you can experience for it.
Yeah, so here I just brought up just from like a visual, right? So even though RTX cards are pretty new, just as a general kind of flyover, if you guys aren't aware, keep in mind that only the latest generation 40 series cards, so like the 4070 Ti, the 4080, and the 4090, those all can support the latest generation DLSS 3.0 technology. If you guys are leveraging older cards, such as the 30 series or the 20 series, you can still take advantage of DLSS, including the latest version that just got released, which is 2.5, which is now seeing actually implementation of some games to continue to fine-tune its performance and its visual quality. But DLSS 3 is exclusive to the 40 series based cards. And so there's continued evolving set of games that have been implemented with DLSS 3, or we'll see it shortly, as Jake was noting here. I'm really excited about a couple of ones that have already been talked about, like Cyberpunk, of course, saw an addition. We have a couple of people in the community that have already talked about it in the thread and literally seen, double almost performance uplift, right? And really been enjoying the experience. And again, regardless, I think sometimes what people's perception or opinion is when it comes to kind of like software processing or, post-processing in terms of graphics, right? And the difference between, let's say, a pure rasterized image. I think really the big value proposition that you're taking a look at is, even if we go back to like 8 years ago and you talk about things like dynamic super resolution, which was a form of actually, let's say, like taking like a 4K render, but putting that out onto like a 1080p based screen, right? So you had extra GPU horsepower and you were actually having the graphics card render it and then bring it back down. And it was actually a form of kind of like more advanced anti-aliasing, but you were actually taking advantage of actually super sampling, right? So running it from a higher res and bringing it down. These are all things that historically from kind of year to year to year, it's great to just see another thing get thrown in kind of the toolbox as a gamer to be able to go, hey, maybe I might take advantage of something like DLSS, or maybe I might take advantage of DSR, or maybe I might take advantage of, NVIDIA broadcast, right? Or I might take advantage of the AV1 encoder or decoder that's in the GPU for that newer generation. So, every user is going to have a little bit of a different kind of usage scenario. They're going to have a different type of gameplay experience, different games that they play, but it's pretty cool to be able to have just these range of options here, right? I'll know just as a call out right here, I'm a big fan. The developers over at FactShark make a big call out that they're going to continue doing some really cool enhancements to Warhammer 40K Dark Tide. So I think that's going to be pretty sweet. The Spider Master relaunches were absolutely awesome, right? And for the PC, and those are seeing that. Frostbite, of course, is a key engine. Dying Light 2, pretty much alongside with Cyberpunk, pretty much just yesterday, just got the brand new DLSS 3 updates. So those are, I think, just a couple of really awesome titles. And of course, last month we also had, right, The Witcher 3, right, with the entire new kind of update, which brought in enhanced graphics and also that support. So a pretty cool set of titles to be able to take advantage of this cool hardware that you have, and there's more to come, right? Oh, very cool. So we got some, we got some 40K players down there, right? Some Dark Tide has been so fun. Yeah, definitely no. That's pretty sweet, right? So we have somebody asking, does anyone know the exact date for NVIDIA Super Resolution for Edge and for Chrome browsers? So that's actually another great feature, right? That's like something that, again, it's part of the actual hardware-based architecture. And so I think this is similar to kind of like the AV1 that's been announced now for Discord, right? Where they're going to be allowing you to actually stream directly through AV1 for NVIDIA-based solutions into that. There's some backend APIs. I haven't seen yet a specific release date yet for that information, but I assume probably there'll be a little bit of a difference between, let's say, like developer releases for the browsers and then what are referred to as like stable branches of the browsers. So if you're somebody that's probably willing to kind of be a little bit more on the edge and, jump onto the beta or the alphas from a browser perspective, then, you can probably take advantage of that feature a little bit more quickly than you will be before it gets to kind of a stable type release, right? But it's going to be a pretty cool feature. And this is something actually some users that were like using, let's say, like the NVIDIA Shield were already aware about, that you took advantage essentially of that advanced post-processing on that hardware side that was able to offer, just sharper, essentially, a picture quality, right? With essentially less aliasing and ultimately just an improvement to whatever you might be seeing. And especially with, if you got variable compression going on or things like that, it's a pretty cool, just nice feature to be able to see. So Jake, in addition to that, what else do we have going on there in terms of the software?
So a big one is going to be GPU Tweak 3. There's been an update recently for it that focuses largely on adding the 4070 Ti compatibility. There are a few additions like adding an OSD for iRacing. So for anyone into racing sims, that might be something really beneficial to you. But JJ specifically can point out some of the benefits of GPU Tweak 3. I know it's not something everybody is quite as familiar with.
Yeah, so I'm a really big fan of utility. So this is actually our own graphics card utility. Of course, it works best with Asus graphics cards, but it is actually a agnostic utility. So it can actually work with other companies' graphics cards, including if you have like a Founders Edition card, it can entirely work with there. So from a base perspective, you're going to get the ability to, of course, do standard things like monitoring. So you can check your temperatures, you can have fan speed adjustment, you can have clock speed adjustment. But we've done a lot of really cool things to be able to also improve the experience, I think, from an enthusiast perspective. So some of the cool things that you're going to have right here is if we actually head over to the website, let me actually bring up the website for you guys and you can check this out. But I want to show you guys some of the really cool, I think, elements that we have specific to GPU Tweak 3. Because one of the things that you may not be aware of that we did when we went through the actual development for GPU Tweak is that for close almost to about a year and a half, we did kind of a community beta. And so we had it out there, but we didn't essentially go into a formal release. And the reason why we did that is we really kind of wanted to take feedback from the community, get kind of the sense of what it is that they wanted, where we could make improvements, where we can make refinements, and then we launched the feature stable release, right? So there's a lot of things that have been validated in here. And the cool thing is if you head over to the GPU Tweak page, I'm going to go ahead and drop this here into the comments section. So if anybody wants to actually go ahead and try it out, they can. You have options right here where you can see you can click a tutorial for the overclocking, click a tutorial for voltage frequency tuning, click a tutorial for the fan controls, click a tutorial for the Profile Connect. So Some things I want to go over here is we have a one-touch option that exists for OC. So if you don't know anything about overclocking and you just want a little bit more performance out of the graphics card, that OC preset that we have is essentially like an internal preset that we check across a large number of samples that we feel pretty confident that the majority of CPUs will be able to target or essentially be able to run at. So if you just want maybe a little bit of a bump up in terms of performance and you don't really know how to do everything when it comes to maybe something like the VF curve or how to maybe adjust things like the power limit, what might be kind of sensible options, and you don't want to maybe jump into the PCDIY group and ask questions, then literally you can just click that button and you would be good to go. So that's a really, really nice option right there. You'll also see that you have presets right there that if you wanted to kind of enable silent mode, which will help to default the card into its quietest operating profile. If you're just like browsing, watching a stream, checking out something on YouTube, great option right there that you can go ahead and engage. The voltage frequency right here, tuner, along with the OC scanner, that's going to be great for overclocking and really gives you that granularity and control that you're going to need, along with some nice, easy adjustment points to be able to make sure that you're maximizing the efficiency of how you actually overclock the GPU. Fan control is pretty straightforward, right? You can just go ahead and customize your own fan curve, pretty straightforward. I'm a really big fan of this profile connect feature. So if you guys have been maybe using other utilities, this is probably one of the biggest reasons why I think I'm a big fan of GP Tweak versus something like, let's say, even Afterburner. One of the really cool things you can do is you can actually do called app profiling. So you can actually have, like, let's say your overclock or fan profile, and you can link that along with even an OSD. So an OSD would be like the overlay that you would see on the screen specific to a game. Now, why that would be advantageous, let's say if you overclock your graphics card, once you engage 3D mode, that 3D mode is always going to be active. So even if you have like Discord running, or if you have your web browser running, or you have other things running, you're running the same overclock that would be running if like you were running in actually Cyberpunk, or if you were playing Apex, or if you were playing Forza. Does that make sense? Not really from an efficiency standpoint and a heat and power consumption standpoint. So it actually can make more sense to potentially actually tune your system and maybe have it run stock, or even maybe in that silent mode, or maybe the most efficient mode when you're just in your web browser, right? Or you're just doing general tasks. And then you could even have different clock profiles for different types of scenarios. Some games are actually going to benefit a little bit more from memory. Benchmark sometimes might be more memory sensitive. Other ones might be more GPU sensitive. Others might be a combination of both. But the cool thing is that you actually have the ability that you could go in and just create custom profiles for each one. So it really kind of helps to, I think, streamline the experience in terms of giving you the benefit when you need it, right? And also being really efficient and really effective for, you know, when you don't necessarily need to be overclocked. So a really cool feature. And lastly, right here, the hardware monitoring. I'm a big fan of this import and export function. Essentially, what we give you the ability to do is, if you guys have ever done like hardware monitoring, you usually have to bust out like a notepad, whether it's a digital version, like a real version, and you start kind of noting down your information so you can compare one value to another value. But the cool thing is here is you could save a value, then you could import it back in. So export it first, and then you could import it back in when you have another run, and you could then load up both and see them really clearly. So if you want to have like your stock value compared to like your overclock value, you could see both of those values set up. And so it allows for just a much easier way to look at that information. And again, a really, really great option. You can't do that in Afterburner right now. The Profile Connect, you can't do that in Afterburner. I think they actually have even a more refined version of the VF curve. So a lot of really cool options to be able to kind of customize your experience and really get the most out of your graphics card experience. So really cool option, and you guys can check it out. I think I dropped the link there in the chat, and I'd love to hear your guys' feedback on GPU Tweak. And if you do have any thoughts on things that you would want to see improved, another really cool thing that I'll note there is down there all the way at the bottom. If you go to the page, there's a feedback button. There's a whole little template. You can just literally fill it out, click submit, and that goes straight to our development team. So they can go ahead and work on making those improvements and releasing, you know, updates as are needed. So Jake, what do you think that you would be using in GPU Tweak 3?
What did you say, JJ?
What do you think you would be using in GPU Tweak 3?
Definitely just the auto OC. Like, ever since around the 10 series, when it stopped being just a bar with some numbers and you set the voltage and go with it, and we started working with kind of the boost curves and everything, I've definitely been out of touch with how to properly overclock the newer cards. So a feature like that is perfect for me. Someone who's not worried about getting every single megahertz out of the card, I can just toss that on there, get my free performance, and just go at it with the games. So
I definitely agree. And for those that you kind of aren't familiar, rest assured that's something that we're going to be covering more in depth in the coming weeks. Is actually maybe doing some dedicated kind of little tuning sessions, giving you the insight is how you actually can overclock your card, how you actually go through the settings. What do you adjust first, right? Do you adjust frequency? Do you adjust the VF curve? Do you adjust the power limit? You know, how different cards respond to that. Maybe even in the future too, doing comparisons like how much maybe performance you get between like water cooling, you know, your card versus maybe not water cooling your card and different things like that. So there's a lot of different kind of things to be able to touch on when it comes to kind of performance tuning. So a big rabbit hole, but that's also what makes it kind of interesting is that there's a lot of different ways to jump into it. Sumin's giving us a thumbs up there. GPU tweak is awesome. I got to learn more. I definitely agree. There's always an opportunity to learn a bit more. Hey, fantastic. Hey man, thanks for joining us. Love the image, man. You've been doing some cool videos, some cool stuff to be able to see in the community. If you guys aren't checking out, I think it's Hikuri Custom. Some cool stuff definitely on his social channels. I like his approach to kind of maybe breaking up a little bit of the monotony of the standard stuff that you necessarily see posted, but still a cool little bit of an enthusiast slant. So you guys can check that out there. Somebody's asking, it's a hypercube. It's just a little cool RGB box. You can change it up. You can do different patterns with it and stuff like that. I just wanted to have something a little bit kind of cool there. Yeah, so wrapping that up there, it says maybe a preset profile for certain games and one for web browsers. That's exactly what you could do. You could 100% have something for your web browser, and then you could have something for a game, right? And again, depending on what you're doing, it's nice to just, again, be able to kind of tailor that, you know, based on what you want. And the cool thing is because it's EXE based, once you create those profiles and the utilities running there in the background, you don't have to kind of go through. It can automatically switch based on the executable. So really, really cool in that regard. All right, what do we got next, Jake?
Well, so we've kind of talked about getting the most out of the cards you already have. And again, it's free stuff, so it's always worth checking out and seeing what you can do with it. But for any of you who might have some holiday money left over and you're like, you know what would be better than tuning the card I have, getting a new one? Definitely some decent sales going on right now. So we'll have these promos running through February. There are a few specific callouts. We've got a wide range kind of across everything from a 3070 all the way down to like the 1650 series. But just some special mentions. The 3070 Strix OC is going to be at 680. So definitely something that if you're kind of wanting to bump up in gaming, if you've got like an older card or, you know, you're running, say, maybe like a 1650, 1660 series right now, an awesome opportunity to upgrade to that. We've got the TUF 3070 at 590. So again, another good value. And then leading into the 3060 Ti series, again, the TUF, we're going to have it at 510. But if you're really starting to look for kind of a value proposition, you've got, like I said, a little bit of holiday money left over, or you're trying to figure out that perfect Valentine's Day gift, something like the dual 3060 Ti at 470, the 360 version at 390, or even getting down into like the 1660 series for a TUF at 280, and then the dual 1650 at 180. You've got a wide range of options for kind of whatever your budget's going to be and whatever performance you're needing, or maybe it's just something to where you want like a new HTPC card. So definitely check those out while there's still stock available.
Yeah, and if you guys, again, are part of our PCDIY group, you can find the link in the description. Jake went ahead and actually did a post here, which actually has some of the promotional pricing that you'll actually see listed on a wide range of the cards right there. So it breaks it down for you. That's kind of hard to paste there in the chat because there's so many models in that regard.
Yes.
We will be talking about a couple of price points for some specific cards. We're going to kind of be covering some of the just latest additions that we've come out with from the 3060 Ti onwards up within that lineup. But the really cool thing is I think right now that you've finally seen kind of the overall kind of market start to stabilize in terms of availability and in terms of just pricing accessibility for cards, especially coming out of the height of kind of the pandemic and some of the constraints that existed there. So it's great in terms of that you do legitimately have cards that I think can offer you a very solid level of performance, you know, starting at around that about $350 price point, right? And then starting to move up where it's about, I'd say almost about $100 price points that you can almost get into you keep kind of moving it up, right? So you'll start to go from about like $350, $399, and then you'll jump another $100, about another $100, another $100, and that goes all the way up to, of course, to something like the 4090 series. Speaking of that, I think this is going to be a great way to go ahead and kick off talking about some, of course, the latest and the greatest things that we have, right, in terms of the GPUs, right, Jake?
Absolutely. And this is where we're going to talk about probably my favorite thing for the day. is, as some of you may have seen, Asus is launching new white series RTX 3060, 3060 Ti, 4080, and 4090 cards. And for me, the 4080 and 4090 Strix OC in the white, it's just beautiful. It's
Yes,
just
I definitely
beautiful.
agree. I mean, I know initially towards the launch, right, there was a little bit of discussion like regarding like, hey, are you guys even going to, of course, make a card? And, you know, I initially was telling people, hey, we didn't have any initial plans. But, you know, like always, we were going to be listening to feedback from the community, because one of the challenges that you definitely have when you talk about the design and development of a graphics card, even from the aesthetic perspective, that's a little bit challenging that sometimes people don't always realize is that color matching and kind of yield output and kind of blemish testing and so many different factors. There's so many different things. And when we went from the prior generation, the 20 series, to the 30 series and then to the 40 series, right, we had different changes in terms of the polymers and the materials, right? So like 30 series for the Strix was actually a plastic polymer composition. And then when we went to the 40 series went to a full metal shroud. And so that, of course, that entirety of that change then kind of then makes it a little bit more challenging, because we have to go back and we have to retest everything and we have to find the right balance and make sure that it kind of hits the yield, the consistency, the color uniformity, and all those things we want. But we're really excited about now being able to offer essentially another model within this lineup. So for those that really kind of want to be able to have something that's bold and bright, I think it's going to be a really cool option. And just for kind of reference here, I want to throw up an image just so that people can kind of see, like, they're wondering like what's the difference between kind of the three as they are. Let's go ahead and bring this up. I think this is a cool little visual here to just take a look at it. So here we, of course, have the original ROG Strix. So this is the classic kind of monochrome, although for this generation, there was a little bit of color accenting on the front of the card, but in a horizontal profile, you don't see that. So it is still pretty much a monochrome card. Then we had the Tough Gaming card, right, which was pretty much all monochrome. It's like a steel gray. It's like a black, essentially, and had a little bit of an RGB accent right there. And now we're going to throw in, of course, this white edition. So we've got three different options. These are all 4090 base SKUs that are available to you. And actually, all of them come in two variants. So you have an overclocked version and you have a standard version. So pretty cool. And here, let's just go ahead and throw a little bit of a visual design in terms of the front aesthetic. So that's just kind of taking, of course, a front view. A little bit more challenging because these cards are bigger for this generation, so not as many chassis can fit it. Of course, our latest generation chassis, like our Hyperion, our GT502, even our GT501, and our Helios can support both vertical and horizontal mounting. Although team horizontal, tell me in the chat, are you team horizontal or are you team vertical in terms of your aesthetic? But you can see we've got those three different options that are available for you. But Jake, like you were saying, you know, it's exciting now to be able to have this edition, right, in terms of the 4090 series and the 4080 series in white, right?
Absolutely. And kind of on your point, I think it's, a lot of people may not understand just how much work goes into developing these white series products, because it may seem as simple as just applying white to the card and just going with that monochrome aesthetic. But when you start dealing with white, one, you have a lot more contrast to deal with versus, say, a black series card. And the design elements can be amplified for better or worse, depending on how all of that is blended together. But even more importantly, white in general is not always the easiest to apply. And as JJ said, especially for color matching across several products. So the quality and the attention to detail and everything that goes into these cards, that's part of why it's not always there at launch. But that's also why, because Asus takes the time to put all this effort into it and launch the right product and not just rush something to market, it's one of the values of kind of waiting for this to be available. And I think JJ has mentioned before some of the extra attention that Asus puts into the whole QC process and manufacturing and everything for products like this, and across the board even. So even for like the white dual 3060 Ti, even those are kind of held to that same standard. It's
Yeah,
not just
and we'll
a
talk about
price
some of those things.
conscious.
And here, I also want to take a little bit of time to help you kind of understand as a recap, because we get a common question a lot. I'm going to go into the comments right there if you want, while I maybe talk about a few things, Jake, if we can see what questions we might have from some people right here. But I want to help to kind of give a little bit of context again of what are some of the differences you have between a Tough Gaming series and the ROG Strix series. So it's important to first foremost note that when we're talking about these white series cards, they are going to be exactly the same as the black or essentially monochrome cards. From a features, functions, design, specification standpoint, they're going to be identical. There is no difference. It's just the color difference between the cards. Okay, so that's the first thing. When you're talking about the PCB, the VRM, the thermal solution, the dual V BIOS, the PCI power monitoring circuit, all of those things are going to be identical. The only other thing I will say that be a little bit different is this is the included little accessories. A lot of the white card owners from the past will know you do get this really cool limited edition little ring that comes included inside the box. So this is actually the accessories you get inside. You saw this. This is actually like a little screwdriver. It's like a little bit, it's got a measurement tool on it, and then it has an integrated standoff jack, right, to support the card to mitigate sag. You've got your PCI Express power connector adapter right there. You've got the limited edition collector's card that comes in there, the little kind of soft velvet pouch there for your actual ROG ring, and then you've got some nice premium white hook and loop fasteners for cable management that you can also go ahead and use. Now, when we go ahead and take a look at the card, some of the differentiation points you'll find on the Strix is going to be this beautiful full 360-degree, what we call tail light ARGB lighting design, which I think looks stunning in terms of a system build. Really, really distinctive kind of design. You also have these two fan headers that are actually on the card. Those are the Fan Connect 2 fan headers. That allows you to actually run fans directly to the card, so that if you want to have, like, let's say your front intake fans respond directly to the GPU temperature, you could do that. Or if you just want to have auxiliary fans, you can do that. That is going to be a different on the card. The dual V BIOS is going to be the same between any one of the cards, whether it's Tough Gaming or ROG Strix, but the ROG Strix version does have a higher default TGP, and that essentially means that the power rating for this card is higher than that of the Tough Gaming. So the Tough Gaming is 450 watts, and then on this card, you're going to have a bump up. You're going to have a 500 watt. They're both feature the same maximum, which is 600 watts. The thermal solution is also going to be different for this card. Let me go ahead and go out here to another slide, and we're going to go and check out another image. But there's a couple of cool differences that we have specific for this ROG generation in terms of the design and development of the card. So let me go ahead and bring this up here. And this is just a quick recap, and then we're going to talk about the heatsink here. But this will kind of help you to know the exact differences. Let me just go ahead and pull this away a little bit easier for people to look. So one, you're going to get more RGB lighting zones. You get a higher TGP and higher default clocks. What that means in terms of performance, it's probably somewhere between about 6 to 3 frames, right? The patented thermal solution. Now, they both feature vapor chamber designs, but the heatsink assembly is more advanced on the ROG Strix and has what's called a milled vapor chamber design, which has even better thermal dissipation performance. The Fan Connect 2 headers, a higher performing VRM. They're both outstanding, and keep in mind, both of the cards, it doesn't matter, is going to be cooler and quieter and faster than an FE card. So it doesn't matter. This is just a little bit higher performing than, of course, the Tough Gaming. The PCI power monitoring circuit, which is built into the card, essentially what it does is it helps to know whether the power supply is operating out of ATX compliant spec. So if it exceeds 10% of the operating spec, the actual LEDs will flash. They'll trigger on. Now, this doesn't mean that the power supply isn't working, but it does mean that potentially in some point, the circuit essentially is detected it's operating a little bit outside of a tolerant spec. And that could be something that you would want to be mindful of. VGA hot wire connectors, which is specific for that kind of the extreme OC community. I'm not going to go into it because unless you guys are a bencher, you're not going to appreciate this feature, but it is on the ROG Strix card. And also a benefit of the Strix is also going to be that they come in white, where you cannot get the Tough Gaming in white. So lastly here, let me just show you guys the milled vapor chamber. So traditional vapor chamber design, when we take a look at this, is you would normally have kind of the heat pipes and they would be perpendicular, kind of flat up against the surface. And so what we mean by milled is you'll actually see is that we actually have to kind of eat space, right? We have to reserve space that exists inside of that base plate. And that allows us to actually have superior efficiency and more effectiveness in terms of how the heat dissipation works for the heat pipes in conjunction with the vapor chamber. So this was a specialized machining process that we had to develop to be able to implement this. And that's the reason why it's also a patented solution. So it's exclusive to the ROG Strix cards that come with the milled vapor chamber design. Now, again, the Tough Gaming card will already be outstanding, and it will be cooler and quieter than what you get even with the Founders Edition. But if you just kind of want that premium additional kind of benefit, that is a value add that you're going to get with the ROG Strix. So let me see. Jake, did we get any questions that kind of popped up in there?
Yeah, we've got quite a few questions, and a few I'd like to address. So someone's asking maybe an Apex version of the GPU with a white PCB. Well, I would be all for a white PCB, but the one thing I will note is that with the Strix series, you're already getting top-notch performance, and you're already getting an aesthetic that matches kind of to the Apex motherboard like design language, since it's kind of carrying that overall Asus ROG design language. So,
and you can't
from
see
an aesthetic
it also.
standpoint,
You can't see the PCB on the graphics card.
exactly.
Yeah, pretty much when you have the card, you're going to see the heatsink. It is something that we've discussed also in the past. It's just there's a lot of challenge and complexity, and even it would make the card even more expensive. And from a value proposition, time to production, we just don't think right now that it's beneficial in terms of releasing a card, especially if you want to be able to produce it in consistent quantity, right? As opposed to like a limited edition offering. Because even keep in mind, the Apex was a limited edition SKU. We didn't mean to sell it indefinitely. And right now it's actually sold out. It can't be purchased. But just because such heavy demand, we've gone ahead and produced a little bit more, and it will be available again in March. So there are constraints and challenges to doing a white PCB. Yeah.
So this one's not entirely graphics related, and for the most part we'll try to stick to that, but since it does relate to a pretty hyped, no pun intended, new product for ours with the Hyperion case, are we going to see that in white, JJ?
I'm not making any promises as of right now. We don't have any plans to do a Hyperion, so that's our latest kind of large chassis, right? It's a beautiful chassis that we have. It's really designed for kind of high-end custom water cooling builds. I think I got an image of it right here. Let me see if I can bring it up. Yeah. I can bring it up right here just in case anybody's wondering about it. It works beautifully also for if you want to be able to put a 4090 in here vertically or horizontally. It will totally work in there. And right now we only have it in black. There might be some discussion on whether or not we'll release this in a white variant, but right now we don't have any plans to release the Hyperion in white.
For what it's worth, guys, I'm also asking. I also want the white Hyperion case. No promises, but I want it too.
So while you take a look through and see if there was any other questions that we might have missed, I want to go ahead and, of course, always let users know what's the actual pricing that you're going to see for these GPUs. So the white cards, pretty much going to start seeing them available in the channel shortly in terms of overall availability. It is going to be a high-in-demand card. We know right now, I would say our Asus ROG Strix cards and our Tough Gaming cards, they're probably the most kind of chased cards in the community as far as what people are looking for, just because of their build quality, their performance, the cool and quiet operation, right? And also outstanding water block support. We have key water block support from every leading water block partner that's on the market is making a block for Asus. So if you want to go water cooling as well, I recommend the Tough Gaming as opposed to probably doing a block on a white card, because you're not gonna part of the reason why buying the white card is you want to keep that beautiful white heatsink shroud, right? But here's your pricing. You're gonna see, so the ROG Strix, the white OC edition, and that is going to mean that it's just the overclock version. You can overclock the non-overclock version. Just the overclock version comes with a little bit of a higher clock speed already pre-programmed and pre-validated on the card. Okay, that's going to be coming in essentially $2,100. The black model is going to be coming in at $2,000, right? So $100 price difference between those two models, essentially both overclocks, right? Then if we step down to the non-overclock models, right, the white 2050 and then 1950 for the black. And then lastly, for the Tough Gaming, if you're interested in the Tough Gaming, 1800 for the OC model, and then 1600 for the non-OC model. So the 4090 lineup from Asus essentially is starting off at approximately $1,600 and then going all the way up to $2,100. Do keep in mind that when it comes to pricing also, we do always recommend too that you try to make sure the purchase, you can of course purchase from like the Asus store directly, or you can purchase from channel partners like, you know, Micro Center, Best Buy, Newegg, or Amazon. But if you buy from anybody that has a marketplace, we do recommend purchasing from a first party marketplace. So that means like Amazon, ship and sold from Amazon, and Newegg, ship and sold through Newegg, because there will be third party resellers that will list on there, and you might think you're buying it quote unquote from Newegg, but they generally might have their own pricing structure that they're following because they're reselling the card from maybe buying it from another source. So we do always advocate for first party purchasing when possible. Okay.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on that real quick. We've seen this comment in the group before more than once. Yes, across the different regions, there are different launch schedules. And yes, you may be able to find some products earlier than whatever date we give for the North American market on, say, Newegg. Just be cautious of that and be aware that often when you see that the price will be higher because it's being imported. And it's always something to be cognizant of, that you're paying more, one, just to have it here earlier, and two, that some of this stuff may or may not impact warranty. JJ probably understands that better than I do, but it's all things to be aware of, that when you're ordering from this third-party reseller that's basically expediting you being able to have access to some of this hardware, that's one, why whatever you see for the price won't line up with the MSRP that JJRI providing in the group, for example.
Yeah. And so why don't you guys let me know which one's your favorite card in the lineup? Which one, if you could pick an Asus, I'm assuming everybody would pick a 4090 if you could just get a 4090 versus a 4080. But let's say relative to your budget, if you were buying either a 4080 or a 4090, which one would you be taking a look at? The white edition, the standard black edition, or the tough gaming, right? So which one would you be taking a look at? I'd love to see your guys' comments. And I did see somebody ask about Best Buy physical availability. So it's important to keep in mind that Best Buy physical availability, so in-store, is quite different than e-tail availability. Brick and mortar companies, especially like Best Buy, they generally have much what are called longer lead times to be able to put products into their stores. So you generally, it's quite difficult to kind of try to get alignment to be able to get a product in the store, unless it's like really forecasted out. Sometimes we're talking about like 4-6 months ahead of time. It can sometimes even be longer than that. So that's the reason why for a lot more of our product assortment, you generally see it available online, and things only in much, much longer life cycles are things that you'll probably see like in store. We are, of course, a leading channel partner with Best Buy, and so we do work with them on trying to continue to improve upon this. But that is just kind of the reality of kind of the brick and mortar kind of let's say lay the land in terms of how products get listed, as opposed to e-tail, where it's much easier for them to kind of virtually list a product, right? Just coming out of their warehouse. So hopefully that answers that question. So Jake, what's been a little bit of the community consensus there on the card selection?
Of course, everybody wants the white card.
Really? Because I see right here, Strix black.
No. See this guy right here?
And we got, I like how the tough logo lights up, right?
No. See, this guy is already trying to plan for future rumors and stuff. Like, that's how badly he wants white cards. He's like, I need it now and I need it later.
I will say, I really do think the tough card does really does look great. I think
it does.
This generation, in terms of its overall design, it's got a really nice, clean, polished aesthetic to it, right? So it is definitely, I think, a great looking card.
Yeah, shout out to the Tough series. While Strix and Maximus and all of these like product series have always been top notch and heavily desired. Like, let's take the Hero motherboard for example. It's always one of the most popular. Tough, especially recently, has really come into its own for the design language.
Yeah, this is a fantastic photo from a great member of our community and also a great content creator, Mr. Matt Lee. If you guys aren't checking out him on his Facebook or his Instagram, here's a little photo that he took of this Tough Gaming 40 series graphics card, and it's beautiful. And the thing is, with our 40 series cards, you can't almost really appreciate them until you get them in hand, because the shroud, which is all metal, it adds to the premium feel to it. Like when you get this card in hand, it just feels really outstanding in terms of the fit and finish. Similarly, the same thing I will say actually for the Strix cards. When you take a look at the Strix cards, they photograph really well, but there is something just in this metal finish. Like, we even use what's called the chamfered edge, and some people call it, they think it's a brick, but I go, there's nothing brick about it, because on bricks we don't have chamfered edges. This really makes a difference in terms of just the subtle feel, to be able to have this kind of like premium kind of feel to it, where you just have a really nice accent to it, right? or this layered kind of etched surface, right, where you actually have depth and texture. Or that's actually, if you didn't know, it's a design rule inside of ROG. We actually have a mandate internally to apply what we call textural elements into our design, so that when you feel the product, it doesn't necessarily feel always the same. We want you to impart kind of an interesting feel to it. But overall, I love it. I know that some people felt, hey, you know, we took a departure in terms of the monochrome aesthetic that we had for the 10 and the 20 series. And here we had a little bit of a brighter aesthetic right here on the front vertically. But of course, the card, when it's in this horizontal, looks purely monochrome. So it still doesn't contend or compete with the colors in your build. And I think it looks fantastic, and it really builds apart. But it seems like we've got some tough gaming guys in there. We've also got some ROG Strix guys in there. But let's go ahead and keep moving the stream along. So what do we got next there, Jake?
So like you said, definitely fans on both sides. You can't go wrong either way. We do have some questions, though, about availability. Just kind of as a general note here, guys, as soon as we have the information to provide to you and give you that availability, it will always be immediately posted into the group. And those group posts will continue to be updated as it makes its way into more marketplaces. So recently we've added, say, Newegg availability to some of the recent launches like the Harp and the Hone. So keep an eye out on the group, and then keep an eye on any of these streams as well, because if something's available at that time, then we'll make note of it during the stream.
Yeah, another thing too is that you can also take advantage of the Asus store, where we have now text notification. We introduced this just around not that long ago, so it's only been around just for a little bit. But we actually have a specific text number just for the PCDIY group. So if you're involved in the group, the text notifications are isolated to there, and that can help to give you notices specific to the Asus store. So we are trying to do our best, at least on the Asus side, to try to give you visibility when that comes in. Beyond that, you know, just try to take advantage of notification systems from channel partners. But we have essentially issued out these cards from distribution, so they are essentially going to be showing up into channel pretty much in the coming days. So, you know, you could literally start to see it pop up on Newegg, you know, like that. You could see them popping up in Micro Center. So you're literally going to want to be watching out for them. And I did give the pricing on the 4090, so I also want to make sure to give you the pricing on the 4080. So just as a recap here, 4080 pricing is going to start off at $1,200, right, for tough gaming, then move into $1,400 for the OC, move into the Strix for the black non-OC at $15. The white is going to be coming in at $1,550. Right, so a $50 delta, a little bit less than the delta that you saw on the 4090, and then we move into the top two, right? So the OC models, right, either white or black, $1,550 or $1,600. Okay, and just to kind of compare and contrast, let me go ahead and I can bring, I think, this up so you can just kind of see that side by side there if we wanted to quickly. Here's the pricing structure as we see it for the 4080 and for the 4090. So 4090 again essentially starts off at $1,600 going up to $21, and then for the 4080, $1,200 going up to $16. Okay, so that is going to be your respective price points. All right. Any last questions right there? Oh, look, I got this one. As a welder fabricator, I've had the argument about chamfered multiple times. Yeah, I definitely think anybody that's in fabrication or done any type of metal work or finishing can really appreciate that. When you actually go look at the design details that we put in there, these are premium design details. It would be much easier to literally just leave it, you know, square, boxed off, not finished, not do any deburring or anything, and just give you the product. And still, it would still be metal. It'd still be nice. But, you know, for us, as part of, I think, an attention to detail and a premium experience, I think it definitely does make a difference. So it is definitely something that is appreciated, right, in terms of that design. So again, that is the pricing there for the 4090 and for the 4080. Now, moving on from there, we didn't talk about them too much, and I think because they kind of happened right at CES, but Jake, let's go ahead and just give a little bit of a quick highlight, I think, on the 4070 Ti and the price points that we're seeing for the 4070 Ti. So let me go ahead and bring up our 4070 Ti pricing if anybody's interested in that. For here, we're only going to have two series, so there's no white edition. If you're interested in the white edition cards, white is exclusive to the 4080 and to the 4090. For the 4070 Ti, you can get the Tough Gaming or the ROG Strix, and that's going to start off at $799, go to $850, $950, and $1050 respectively. And again, remember, when you're seeing the OC to the non-OC, the overall overclocking essentially experience is going to be the same. You can overclock both cards. The only difference is the OC model comes pre-programmed with essentially a higher verified clock speed, right? In most situations, many users can usually probably manually engage that overclock, but keep in mind, since overclocking is not guaranteed, right, that is a difference. In the OC, you're getting that guaranteed 100% overclock. It's validated, so you know that speed will run that. And again, people ask, how much of a performance impact does that impart? It's not a huge amount. I'd say, like I said, on average, it's probably about 3 to 5 FPS. It depends on the games. Different games have different sensitivity to clock speeds increases. And design-wise, these cards are going to be pretty similar as far as the overall design aesthetic. So here we're taking a look at the ROG Strix card. It's going to look pretty similar to the 4080. But we do dimensionally have a little bit of a change. So dimensionally, these cards do get a little bit more compact. So take, for instance, we actually had a couple of builders already, like even in our AP201, which is a micro ATX chassis, we're able to use the 4070 Ti, whereas they couldn't take advantage of like the 4080 or the 4090 because they were a bit too large. So dimensionally, these are still going to be a larger card, but they are smaller. So you are going to be able to have a little bit more agility in terms of how much of a chassis are you going to need in terms of the length of clearance. So if you've got a really compact, more compact chassis, and you do not want to change your chassis, then maybe take a look at the 4070 Ti if you're looking to step up. And you know, from a performance perspective, 4070 Ti is still a very, very strong part. I mean, it's going to be comfortably be able to handle pretty much anything you're going to want to be able to throw at it when it talks to a gaming narrative. And let me go ahead and just throw the 4070 Ti tough card for a reference here. So you'll see ID design, it's going to pretty much be very similar. And here you'll notice, right, again, this is actually a little bit more boxy than like the ROG Strix, where people think they all just look like a box, where you'll notice here, it's a little bit more hard edges, right, where you don't necessarily see kind of that chamfer that you would have like on the ROG Strix card, which is a little bit kind of more, again, of that premium accent. But here, I think it also kind of fits in the kind of the tone and manner, right, of the tough gaming graphics cards, right, which they really do have a beautiful design language. And you also, on both of those, still get that little nice little accessory, right? So again, the little standoff and screwdriver accessory that comes included within that. And I know for a lot of the VR fans, we don't talk about this a lot, but our cards, compared to some other manufacturers, we do dual HDMI, which I know a lot of the VR guys like, because some of the cards only come with one single HDMI, and then they do more DP. For us, we think that this is a better mix because we see sometimes more people maybe using a secondary like HDMI monitor, or they might have VR. So it's a little bit more of a flexible setup in terms of that configuration. Okay. All right. So that takes care of us on the 4070 Ti. Any questions that we got on that side? Oh, hey, DePoets. Happy to have you here, man. Fantastic. Hey, if you guys want to check out a cool build that's happened with a Z790 based motherboard, I think DePoets just finished actually taking advantage of our Z790 ProArt board because he's a big fan of 10G networking right there. Let me see right here.
One quick question referring to the 4080.
Does it still come with the ring, or is the ring unique to the 4090? Let me actually check the images right here. I believe it should actually come also with the 4080. Let me see if I have them in here. I don't have the complete image set for the 4080 with the included accessories, but if you want, feel free to go ahead and tag me in the group, or you can email pcdiy@asus.com, and I can double check on that for you to see if it actually does come included with the ring. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, he says, pretty awesome. Yeah, so the ProArt Z790, 128 gigabytes, 6000 MT Kingston Fury memory, and a 3900K. Plus that board has Asus AOC. So even if you want to overclock too, even though it's a ProArt, it's a content creator centric board, that you pair that up with, of course, one of these 40 series GPUs, and you're going to have a beastly system. So that is definitely going to be a pretty sweet rig. But I think
might even be able to run Chrome on it.
Yeah, I think we want to maybe go to something that might be a little bit more reasonable, right? We touched a little bit earlier on having some updates, right, for the 3060 Ti, right?
Yes, that's correct. And again, this is something I'm pretty hyped about because the 3060 and 3060 Ti are now also going to be available in white via the Dual Series. And while it may not be quite as flashy as, say, the Strix series, it's definitely still a very nice and clean aesthetic, would pair perfectly with, especially, say, the Prime series. And for anyone with, say, like a small form factor HTPC, this is going to be an excellent option for that. Thinking the AP201 would be a perfect chassis to put this into.
Yeah, I think the great thing is on all these cards, there shouldn't be just about almost any user, unless you're talking about like a super compact, like I don't know, like 12 or 10 liter like mini ITX chassis or something like that, where you might have some really hard restrictions. These cards should pretty much fit in just about every type of chassis that's normally available on the market. And I think they really hit a great sweet spot. I'm going to show you the pricing for the 3060 Ti, but this is, keep in mind, this is the new GDDR6X based version. So the 3060 Ti had an original edition, and now this is a newer, updated performance version. So you get even better performance than what you saw in the original kind of 3060 Ti launch with that GDDR6X. So you're going to get that, and we're going to have three different options that you have available. You're going to have a dual that's going to be in white. That includes even a white backplate, which you don't always necessarily get a backplate at this price point or in this segment. So I think that's nice. This really nice, cool, updated kind of subtle kind of dual color tone design that we have here with the standard dual, where it's black and it's white. Just a little bit of nice white accents. And then the tough gaming for those that want kind of that highest performing 3060 Ti that we have. And that also includes a backplate. So essentially dual fan solutions and then triple fan solutions. So let me go ahead and bring up the price point here for you guys if you guys want to check out these cards. And these are already available. I do know that they've actually been pretty popular. We've already sold out of literally this 3060 Ti. $399 card is sold out from our Asus store, but you might be able to see it maybe on Newegg or Amazon, as we do prioritize our channel partners in terms of inventory. We try to give them more inventory than, of course, us having the inventory at Asus store. But you can see we start off at $399 and then go up to $479. So actually quite reasonable, because the 3060 Ti, you're going to be able to do high refresh rate gaming, at 1080p, so 165 hertz, 200 hertz, 240 hertz is going to be entirely viable. Very, very strong card for 1440p based gaming, and even for some, let's say more moderate or not necessarily as demanding for ultra high refresh rate for 4K, you could be jumping and you could play like Forza in 4K with a 3060 Ti, right? You could definitely jump into Overwatch and be playing, 4060 Ti. The Witcher, you could play at 4K with the 3060 Ti. And you also still have advantage, keep in mind, of things like the DLSS technology too. So it is still definitely a capable card. Great option for maybe an upgrade if you're maybe in that more kind of like mainstream kind of gamer. Maybe you play a lot of kind of esports related titles, or maybe you're a little bit more casual. Maybe you enjoy more kind of single player games where you don't necessarily have to focus so much at having ultra high refresh rate. These can be really, really solid options. And again, the color choices I think are great for you in terms of being able to have the choice, right? That you can go with, like I said, you got the white cards, you got the standard black cards, or you got, of course, the triple fan solution. So that's going to be the 3060 Ti. And all of those should actually be all out currently. So you should be able to pretty much pick those up right now in terms of availability. Any questions that we saw in there, Jake, or are we looking okay there?
No new questions about the 3060 series.
Okay, so one last thing that I did want to go ahead and touch on here that I think is pretty cool, that some people may not be aware of when it comes to Asus graphics cards also, is going to be something that we call our Auto Extreme production process. And so this is pretty cool because, again, whether you're buying something like a 3050, a 3060, a 3070, or a 4090, they're all going to be actually produced using what's called our Asus Auto Extreme production process. So this process is a combination of not only the components and that we actually utilize, but also the production process. So we were the first manufacturer in the industry to unilaterally do SMT production for all of our graphics cards. Were some manufacturers that were still actually using people to actually even surface mount certain things like inductors on the cards. And so we were the first to actually move over to that SMT production process to essentially allow for superior consistency and production quality. And then also introduce more advanced forms of what's called AIO. So this is essentially the inspection analysis process for the final output of the card when it comes to the surface mount components. And then even the analysis that we put into all those different things that we pick for the cards, whether they're the inductors or the power stages, the VRM, the controller that's on there, all those things, we really take a kind of careful evaluation in terms of how we do load balancing, whether we do what are called molded inductors. Those little things that you see right there that we're pointing at, those are all called inductors. We were actually also the first manufacturer to unilaterally move to fully molded alloy inductors. And for some people that kind of ask like, hey, is a card going to have coil whine? The reality is coil whine is a reality for all graphics cards, especially high performing graphics cards on the market. But having a fully molded alloy inductor does actually give you a benefit. The benefit of having a fully molded alloy inductor, and we can go in and a little bit kind of explain this here, is these are your inductors, or what are called chokes, right? So sometimes people ask about like coil wine. Technically, you can have what's called inductor resonance from power stages. They can also happen from the inductor here. But when you go to a fully molded inductor, as opposed to a hollow inductor, that helps to actually mitigate that. And also you can actually do what is called load balancing, which can also help to stabilize this. And there are some other things that we're also researching for the future. So you always actually want to keep tuned, because you might see some interesting information from us in the future on this topic. So I'm not going to tell you more about that, but make sure to keep it tuned in that regard. But yeah, so essentially just what that means is, again, I think you can feel comfortable and confident in terms of the overall quality and the construction and the design of what we're doing on the cards, right? So pretty cool in that respect, right? Let me go ahead and see if we have any other quick questions that might have popped over right there. So I'll ask you this quick question, just even though it's out of the norm, it's not a graphics related question, but I went with the Z690 Extreme over the Z790 Extreme due to availability. Is the higher MSRP on the Z690 due to the DAC? No, the actual pricing should pretty much almost be parity, because technically the Extreme has some things that the other Extreme doesn't do. Like the Z790 Extreme has a color OLED live dash display, where the Z690 doesn't. But the actual audio design is pretty much the same between the two, so you don't need to worry about that. Okay. So somebody's asking, wish the US prices were the same as in Canada. So, pricing always is going to have some variability when you talk about North America, right? Just because, you talk about exchange rates, there could be tariffs, there's more logistic charges, right? There's so many different factors when you talk about economy and pricing. But sometimes I include it, but in the future, I'll try to make sure to do that, because this is Asus North America, and we do include Canada as part of our market. So I'll try to make sure, if I can have them, the pricing list in the future include Canadian pricing if we have it, because sometimes some products, they're not also always offered for the Canada market, because it's a little bit smaller, and it also depends on the e-tailers whether or not they're going to skew all those variants, right? So, whether it's going to be Best Buy or Mike Computers or Canada Computers or Memory Express, whoever might be the partner, right? They also have to carry that assortment. And sometimes the smaller partners, they might not want to carry like, 6 models, right? They might want to just carry like 1 or 2 models. But if you're interested, always let your e-tailer or your retailer know, I would love to see that Asus product, because then that allows us to go to them and say, hey, can you work with us on seeing that? Because we see demand from your customers, right? Okay. Somebody's asking, the 3060 Ti GDDR6 cooler, are you going to use that cooler for the next gen too? That's actually a really good question, and I can't tell you yes. The reason why is, one, we don't discuss products which may or may not be under design and development, but what I can tell you is that even if we did know that there was, let's say, a GPU that would immediately replace this, so it's like let's say a proverbial 4060 in the future, right? We always make an assessment based on the performance of that GPU design and the cooler. So sometimes that might mean that we have to entirely redesign the cooling solution specific to that card's topology and to that GPU output. Other times it might be a little bit of a retrofit. It entirely depends. So I can't say that you'll see that same exact design for that class. It could be an actual different cooler design. So, always just make sure to keep it tuned, and that will let you know, what we're going to have going on in that regard. Okay. Okay. What about our neighbors and in the South, in Mexico? Yes. So actually, technically, also Latin America, Mexico, South America is covered as part of Asus ACI. That's actually our kind of operating branch. We do cover that too. There are even more logistic variables when you talk about Latin America and South America. So I would tell you, I don't generally include pricing structure in the PCDIY group for Mexico or for Latin America. But what I can tell you is, if you are interested, let me know. I can help to confirm on that information. And specifically for Mexico, we do actually have a Mexican PCDIY group that is actually available, and there is actually content that you can check with our Mexico Asus team on hopefully helping to confirm for you on like e-tailers and pricing and things along those lines if you're interested in there. Okay. All right. So Jake, what do we got next?
So I think we've talked enough about the cards. Why don't we take time to look at one of them a little bit more?
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay. Oh, great. PCDIY Builder Spotlight. Let's go ahead and jump into that. Although We did. I'll show it after the PCDIY Builder Spotlight. We did have one last card, guys. We got the 3070 Ti V2 that's in there to kind of fill out our kind of good, better, best. But I'll get into that one after we take a look at this. So the cool thing about this Builder Spotlight, if you guys are interested, again, if you're part of the PCDIY group, we've got a great submission form. You can actually submit your build to be actually featured on the stream. And so let me go ahead and get together the images that we have right here for this build. And so this one's actually going to be from, I believe, Philip. So let me go ahead and get his name slotted in there just so we can make sure to get him his attribution, his credit. And the cool thing is this is almost like serendipity, right? Where it's like he's actually got a white themed build taking advantage of this white series graphics card, right? So one of the first ones here. So let me go ahead and get him added in there. And so it's going to be Philip, and let's bring in his photos here. Give me 1 second. And I also think, yeah, he threw us in a little video file here too.
Yeah, definitely had to take a moment to appreciate the build here. Not only does it highlight the new white Strix series, so a huge fan of that from the get-go, but it does show the kind of cohesion across the white product series, even from a generation or so before, and how you're kind of able to maintain that full white system and aesthetic even as you may rotate out hardware in the future, and just kind of keep that clean monochrome style that's becoming more and more popular these days.
So let me go ahead and update this. So right here, he did also name his system. His system is called Luna. I think that's a very fetching name. Makes sense, right? And
very appropriate.
Props to Philip. This is actually also his first PC build. So this is not even, he hasn't been a long-time builder. It's not like, you know, his 10th build. This is actually his first PC build. So
yeah, I know my first build, and it did not look like this.
So let's go ahead and take a look here at what we've got from Philip. So we can see already. So I usually ask for images to be kind of turned off because I want to kind of see like a before and after. I kind of want to see how it all comes together. So we definitely can see we've got a split chamber chassis design with, of course, the very popular course chassis right here, which if you guys are interested, we do actually have our own GT502 in white, even with full white cables on the inside, which is now available. You can buy it right now. And it also doesn't have the issue that this chassis has, that if you want to actually go horizontally, the cable actually kind of presses up against the glass, and it's not necessarily ideal for it. But here we can see that we've got a vertical mount, really showing this kind of beautiful contiguous flow from the white, going from the graphics card to our ROG Strix series, which are our white series ROG motherboards that we have. Got, of course, a white cooler, the white Lian Li fans also in there prepped out. So we see right now looking like a good foundation, right? So we can see, I love this, right? A little bit of accent thrown in, of course, that flare there with the RG ring. So that is the ring that you do get inside the little pouch. It does come inside of there. And again, whoever asked me about whether it comes available with the card, again, let me know. Email me, pcdiy@asus.com, or tag me in the PCDIY group, and I'll check to see if it comes with the 4080, okay? So pulling out, we can see a nice, really cool kind of expansive shot right there. He's even kind of running a nice little kind of color combination there with the black and the white. So white keycaps, black keycaps, then a nice large extended mat right there, white mouse. Really, really cool, just kind of look and feel and vibe there, right? Very, very minimal. But there we can see now with that nice little illumination, looks really nice. And the cool thing that you notice right here is you get a little bit this kind of chrome or iridescence that occurs actually on the front of the card, which looks really, really, really nice. And I think helps to offset it being like entirely quote unquote white, right? It helps to create a little bit of textural contrast, which I think is really, really nice. And then I love, like, again, that tail light design there, that little RGB accent. Again, not super crazy in terms of lighting, but adds just that additional kind of nice little sequence lighting effect, which is really cool. And we also did just recently updated a really big update for Armory Crate that now actually gives you 2-point gradients, where you can actually have two color values and you can sequence them back and forth into up to 9 different directions. And we also updated an adaptive color so that you can actually go from your Aura wallpaper and you can make your own Aura wallpaper and then have that flow back and forth between your components in your system. So if you want to do some really kind of interesting RGB transitions, you can do that. But really cool build. What are you thinking, Jake?
I mean, obviously, I'm a huge fan. I've, especially over the last year or so, grown very fond of kind of the white and grayscale look. I just think it's so clean, and that by having a lighter interior, it really lets you highlight all of the different products and things don't blend together as much. And I think this is a prime example of that, to where you can see all of the little details like JJ mentioned. You got kind of that chrome mirrored finish. And even when the system's off, pieces like the screen that's on the motherboard, for example, will often have that kind of same reflective look. And so no matter whether it's turned off just sitting there or whether it's on and you're using it, it still has just a beautiful styling to it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a really, really nice build, and I give huge props, dual thumbs up to Philip, especially for his first build. I can't niggle at anything right here, right? I mean, it's the cable management is really nicely, cleanly done. You know, you could probably say, hey, maybe if you really wanted to, maybe get some little bit of sheathing right here for maybe the white. But the good thing is that the black actually always serves, I feel, as a little bit of a contrast. It actually helped to elevate the white, so it's not necessarily for me. And I even like the choice right here. This is a little bit interesting. Everything else is soft diffuse, so I feel that a little bit of the choice here to go with the Trident Royals, which have a little bit more kind of a sparkled kind of textural element to it. Maybe something like the Team Group Deltas, which have a more soft diffused, might have kind of been just a little bit more in vibe with the same LED lighting that the rest of the fans and everything else has, but they still look, I think, really nice. And I can't see 100% if these are the silver version. So if it's a silver version, it also might give it a little bit of contrast, which kind of actually maybe complements the silver that you have kind of here in the front. So I could see it work either which way, right? I still think it looks great, right? But overall, nicely done there. Let me go ahead and take a look here through his form. So let me bring up his form just so we can actually get through.
Definitely a build that is nicer than even quite a few I've built. So much less my first one, not really anything negative I can say. And again, as JJ pointed out, there's always so many options that you can do to really tailor it to your own design. Even little small tweaks like changing the RAM can have an impact in the overall appearance. And for me, that's part of what got me into DIY PC in the first place, is just that you really can make this kind of stuff yours.
Yeah. So let's see. So does the build have a theme? He says, not so basic white theme, focusing on getting white on every part. So for sure, he nailed that. He pretty much has a white component across the board.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. What are 3 words you would use to describe the build? Is clean, beast, and minimalist. Definitely, this is a beastly performance system. It's got, you know, minimal vibe, definitely in terms of the overall kind of setup, and very clean. I don't view clean for white being a default, because I think black can look equally as clean. But definitely, I think the overall cable management and the layout of the system is refined and well laid out. So in that respect, I definitely think it's clean. Does the build have a name? Luna, which I think, like JK was saying, right? I think makes sense, right?
Definitely fitting.
And let's see here. In terms of his specs, what is he rocking? He's got a 13900 KF, which he makes the note. He did apply with Thermal Grizzly Cryonaut. Then he's got an ROG Strix 4090. So he's got the big boy edition, 4090 white OC edition. Then he is rocking a 42-inch OLED-based display. And then he's got a secondary Tough Gaming. It's a VG27AQL1A. I believe that's our 1440p based monitor that he has there. And then on the motherboard, he's doing an ROG Strix Z690-A. That's the DDR4 version that he has. Then on the cooler, he's got a white AIO. We also, if you guys don't know, just today, brand new today, we do have the Ryu 3 in white. It is right now available. You can buy it right now, both the 240
looks great.
And the 360. Seasonic Prime 1000 watt, a 1 terabyte PCIe NVMe Gen 4 SSD. Then he has another 2 terabyte a PCIe NVMe M.2 SSD, and then he's running 36 MT, 32 gigabytes of memory in there, and then the Lian Unifans all inside Dynamic Evo, the Snow White edition, right? And he's got the streamer cables in there, and then also the Lian Li vertical GPU kit, and that's all running on Windows 11. About $6,000 was his total budget. He was most proud of the video card itself. The white RTX 4090 Asus Strix card is one of the most limited and exclusive white colored video cards that's out right now, and I'm assuming he absolutely loves it. And he's also very lucky, because I think even though right now it's coming out in terms of availability, it's going to be a hard card to get. So Kudos, man. You were able to pick one up.
He's got his unicorn.
Yep,
That's
he's
for
got his
sure.
unicorn. Is there anything he would change about the build? If given a chance, I would have chosen the Lian Li Infinity white fans over the ones I'm using for some extra RGB and aesthetic look. I can see that. Yeah, the Infinity, kind of cool, because what he means by the Infinity is the Infinity has like this little infinity kind of like mirrored effect. And that could actually be kind of interesting with this, with kind of like this little bit of the visual vibe that we have here on the acrylic panel for the Strix, and also this kind of little bit of this silver accenting that you see mirrored effect on the front of the card. So I could see how that actually could carry over a little bit into the fans.
Yeah.
And
If anyone remembers was it the 980 Ti Poseidon or 1080 Ti Poseidon, and I think the 2080 Ti Matrix, correct? Both of those used a form of the Infinity
an
panel.
Infinity display on the card. Yeah, yep, definitely. Yeah, I think that would be pretty cool. I mean, definitely don't need to change it because that'd be a lot to spend on fans. Also, for those of you that are wondering, we will have our white Tough Gaming fans available in March. So if you're looking for some Asus white fans, then we're going to have you covered in March, okay? And how long did it take for him to put together a system? Less than 24 hours. He predominantly uses this system for gaming. He likes to jump into some Cyberpunk, some Red Dead Redemption, Witcher 3, Valorant, and Dota 2. His overall favorite kind of function or feature, he says the heat sinks on the 4090 Strix is on another level. Temps and noise is unmatched. That is why it's simply called the peak of its kind, whether it may be for productivity or gaming. Wow. I don't think I could have said it better than that. So kudos, man, Philip. You absolutely killed it, man. Fantastic build, especially for your first time out. Stunning, man. Killer job. Great to be able to go ahead and feature it here on the PC DIY Builder Spotlight.
Yeah, I'm excited to see the next one he does.
Yeah, I think
I assume it won't be for a while given that hefty hardware, but I'm curious to see the next one he does.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree, right? Definitely price point, it's definitely a little bit more on the expensive side there, so it's not something you would probably want to be building all the time, right? But, definitely came out quite nicely there, right? So let me go ahead and see. I've got one other question right here. It says that need a white 4070 Ti Strix. Is that coming soon? From Koopish. Koopish, thanks for asking us. Right now, we don't have any plans. I am taking feedback to help to relay to our team. I know that I think in this price point, a lot of people would really like to try to see a white edition for the 4070 Ti just because the price jump into the 4080 is definitely a bit more expensive in terms of that regard. So right now, we don't have any commitment to do that. But it is something that we are internally discussing. So right now, you can only get white in the 3060 Ti that we showed, white in the 4080, and then also in the 4090. And of course, if we do a 4070 Ti in white, rest assured, the first place you're going to find out about it is going to be on this stream and going to be in the PC DIY group, as well as, of course, our Asus social channels. Right, Jake?
Absolutely. And I'm going to, on the note of taking product feedback, shamelessly plug another white Hyperion request.
Yeah, I would definitely say if you guys are interested, as always, let us know. I think it's great. And, we also love people in the community that love to do things in terms of just letting us know when they want to be able to see things. Like one of my favorite things has been, here's an actual build from Justin Chu, who's done some cool stuff. He took our Tough Gaming graphics card and he made a white edition version. And I got to say, even though the fans were black, it looks really good. In this white edition. So white edition Tough Gaming. And I know that's another one that we've asked, where right now most of our white edition products all are under the ROG line. We generally don't have many under the Tough Gaming. Tough Gaming is pretty much chassis. We do release a lot of the Tough Gaming chassis in white. So we have the GT501 in white. We have the GT502 in white, right? But a lot of the other products under the ROG line. So same thing. I think that's the bigger question, right? Should we release like a Tough Gaming, or should we just keep the ROG Strix and then have like the a 4070 Ti in white? I don't know. We're gonna have to see. But as always, we appreciate your guys' feedback and commentary on that. And lastly, there, just because I wanted to go ahead and touch on it, speaking again of the Ti part, I did want to go ahead and bring up because we kind of went over from the pricing perspective, right? Where if you guys remember, we did touch on that. Essentially, we have the if I kind of run through them again, just kind of wrapping this stream up here as we go, right? We started at the bottom kind of with the 3060 Ti, right? So starting from 400 going up to 480, where we've got the dual. We have it in black, we have it in white, and then we have the Tough Gaming, right? Then a card that we did miss out on, right, is going to be the the 3070, Ti. And here we're going to have just two models. This is going to be an OC and a non-OC. And then that's kind of your next bump up. So that goes up to $599 and $650. So start to here, you can really see that the actual kind of product stack has been fleshed out pretty nicely, I think, from a price point, right? Going from $399, right? We're going into then the 400s, the 500s, the 600s, right? And then in your next step up, you're going to go into, of course, your 4070 Ti, right? So you go into $799, $850, $950, or $1050, depending on the card that you're looking at. And then we go into our 4080 series. 4080 series starts at $1,200, right? 14, 15, 1550. And then we go into the highest end model, right, at $1,600. And then lastly, of course, we have the 4090s, right? So 16, 18, 1950, 2050, 2000, or 2100. And like I said, some of that price differential is between like the white and the black, where the white, you always pay a little bit of the premium just because, like I said, it's a little bit more involved in terms of the overall production process, right? All right. So I think overall, that wraps up our first stream. So if anybody has any kind of remaining questions, feel free to go ahead and drop them in the chat. If not, we welcome you to go ahead and, like I said, join us in our Asus PCDIY community. It's close to now almost 41,000 members strong. It's a great place to be able to find out about all the latest and greatest when it comes to Asus graphics. You can get build insights, you can get recommendations, tweaking and tuning insights, and more to come there. And as always, too, like I said, we'll have more coming here in this stream. And you can also, like I said, tag me or tag Jake in the group if you guys have any questions, right? So any closing thoughts on your part, Jake?
Yes, just in addition to tagging us for your kind of daily comments and questions, definitely be thinking about this stream and any content that you might want to deep dive on and to learn more about. JJ kind of already touched a little bit on things like GPU tweak, but with these newer cards, there are so many features to the tech side of them. It's no longer just a GPU that makes some frames in a game. You've got DLSS 3, you've got ray tracing, you've got all of these different like special features essentially. And for some people, it doesn't matter. They're just going to run their game as is. But if any of you have special content that you'd like to focus on that and maybe answer some questions for you, show you how to utilize it better, explain more what exactly it is, then please let us know. We're definitely looking into having some kind of dedicated streams at times to go over this tech and make sure the community is really getting all of the knowledge and the value out of the cards that they can. So just keep that in mind as this series progresses. Any of that type of content that you want to see, please let us know.
For sure. And wrapping this out here, somebody was asking us on Facebook, was this also streamed on YouTube? Yes. So we simulcast this stream out. It's should be you should be seeing it pop up on our Asus North America Graphics YouTube channel. You should also be seeing it on our Asus Twitter feed, and then you should also be seeing it on our Asus Facebook. Those are specific graphics accounts. So again, we have Asus North America general accounts, and then we have our Asus graphics accounts. So there are 3 accounts which you can see streaming down there below. And again, if you guys are checking this out on demand, feel free. Again, all the links are going to be in the description down below. You can feel free to go ahead and reach out to us, and we look forward to seeing you hopefully in the group. And from there, make sure to go ahead and keep it tuned. That reminder, hopefully this will be happening on a weekly basis, generally every Thursday at 3 p.m. And then you can also see me for our weekly PCDIY streams weekly on Fridays at 3 p.m. So with that, guys, take care, take it easy, enjoy the rest of your day. Best of luck with your build.
Thanks, everyone.